Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Every single damn time, right? Every time Donald Trump has a plan or his team rolls out a policy, all the big media experts start crawling from under their rocks, selling the endless doom and gloom what-if scenarios. Donald Trump does a thing successfully, and the response always is, well, what if it destroys the fabric of time as we know it? It's always the exact same behavior. What if this decision that the president makes leads to catastrophic, disastrous results? It's always the same negative tone, the same dismissive behavior, and then of course all justified with the typical journalist defense of, well, I'm just doing my job, I'm just asking the hard questions. But it's funny how this constant, endless what-if doomsday scenario question set only ever gets targeted towards the Trump administration. Joe Biden for 4 years walked the country through the path of loose Lego pieces, 4 years of foot pain, and not once did we constantly hear the ring of doomsday scenarios. But with Donald Trump, it's every single little thing. And this clip right here that I'm going to show you guys puts it all into perspective. And speaking of putting, boy, did Scott Bessent put Margaret Brennan in her place. Let me show you guys the clip, and then of course, let's have the conversation. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape.
When you were last here in March, we were trying to gauge what the impact of the standoff with China and with the tariffs on the rest of the world would do for American consumers here at home. At that time, you told us you were going to appoint an affordability czar and council to figure out 5, you said, or 8 areas where there will be some, pain for working class Americans. Where are you anticipating price increases?
Well, thus far, we wanted to make sure that there aren't price increases, Margaret, and thus far there have been no price increases. Everything has been alarmist. That the inflation numbers are actually dropping. We saw the first drop of inflation in 4 years. The inflation numbers last week, they were very pro-consumer.
Right. But you listen to earnings calls just like we do. Mm-hmm. You know what Walmart's saying, what Best Buy's saying, and what Target are saying.
But Margaret, I also know what Home Depot and Amazon are saying. I know what the South China Morning Post wrote within the past 24 hours, that 65% of the tariffs will likely be eaten by the Chinese producers.
The reality is there will either be less inventory or things at higher prices or both.
Margaret, when we were here in March, you said there was going to be big inflation. There hasn't been any inflation. Actually, the inflation numbers are the best in 4 years. So why don't we stop trying to say this could happen and wait and see what does happen?
He absolutely obliterated her. This constant focus on the absolute worst case scenario and nothing else. Not paying attention to the stuff that Scott Bennett is paying attention to, like the South China Morning Post, showing that Chinese producers are likely to eat about 65% of those tariffs. That basically tells you that the scare tactics about rising prices and devastating inflation is complete garbage. It's just so obvious that all these left-wing hacks in the media are living in their little Democrat bubble where everything comes downstream from the rhetoric and the interest of the party. Clearly, these characters like Margaret Brennan aren't thinking for themselves, but rather just regurgitating whatever the DNC talking points of the day are. Trump officials show up to these shows and instead of dealing in facts, they're dealing with constant Democrat attacks. Oh, but the experts say that you're about to cause an inflationary crisis and recession. Always with the what ifs. This insufferable habit from the media of just painting Trump's policies as instant doomsday failures. Let's not pretend like this is our first rodeo here. Remember when they said that Donald Trump's first round of tariffs would cause inflation to explode? It didn't happen then, and it's not happening now, at least as of right now. Inflation is trending towards the lowest levels in 4 years, but the media clearly seems hell-bent on keeping the people in a constant state of panic. In the era of Trump, they'd rather spend more time talking about what might go wrong than what's actually going right. Then we move on to the second segment, where now all of a sudden people like Margaret Brennan are concerned about the deficit. Would you look at that? Nobody cared about the deficit when Joe Biden was in charge. In fact, no, they pushed Joe Biden's ridiculous propaganda relating to the deficit going down, even though he was driving it up. But back then, they weren't so interested. Now, all of a sudden, the deficit's at the top of mind.
One of the reasons I'm sitting here talking to you today and not at home watching your show is that I was concerned about the level of debt. So the deficit this year is going to be lower than the deficit last year, and in 2 years, it will be lower again. We are going to bring the deficit down slowly. We didn't get here in 1 year. We didn't get here in 1 year, and this has been a long process. So the goal is to bring it down over the next 4 years, leave the country in great shape in 2028.
And again, he completely dismantles her because she's living within the world of the leftist hive mind, where everything's bad, everything's going wrong. And I guess she isn't privy to the facts that Scott Bessent just hit her with. The tariffs are expecting to bring in over $300 to $400 billion annually. Think about that. What does that equate to in 10 years? That's $4 trillion. That's real money. And now combine that with spending cuts, economic growth. You know, the whole ambition, the whole play here, since day one of this administration, has been tackling spending, tackling the deficit, realigning global trade, and bringing jobs back. There's been a clear, outlined plan, and it's been working quite well, at least in terms of preliminary results, yet the media doesn't report on it. They can't see it. They're more focused on the negative chirping. The goal has been to tackle the deficit since day one, but here they are, I guess, playing catch up. Ooh, but what about the deficit? Just read the damn plan. The entire goal is about making America strong again, unleashing natural resource production, and slowly paying down the tab that Joe Biden and his cronies ran up. But obviously they don't want to have that conversation. No, they'd rather speculate on every possible negative outcome that they could dream of. And you know what's the most telling? Don't you find it funny how none of these doomsday scenario line of questions never really got asked during Biden's inflation crisis? No, back then it was, it's all temporary, nothing to see here, it's fine, just move along. When Joe Biden was doing actual damage to your and the country's future, post-COVID, Joe Biden committed to spending more than $2 trillion than were coming in on a yearly basis, essentially just keeping pandemic-era level spending. And we kept saying the word over and over again, inflation, inflation, inflation. But not once did any of these journalist hacks ever mention inflation back then. Only after the inflation crisis spiraled completely out of control. Back then, the narrative was always defensive. It's temporary. Relax. But now with Donald Trump, every question is just dripping. It's oozing in panic. And just think about how misplaced that panic is. Oh, $300 to $400 billion in extra revenue coming in every year. That according to many sources and according to historical data, you know, the last time Trump was in office and he slapped China with the tariff, Chinese producers ended up eating the majority of the price increases, and a 20% tariff led to a 0.7% price increase. Wow, lower taxes, less government spending, no more Medicare for illegals, a booming energy sector, and a booming economy? Oh, it's a 5-alarm fire. How does that make any sense? Obviously, it makes no sense. It's all about the message. And if we're talking about Trump, the message is always frickin' doomsday. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.